My name is Sydney Rankmore. I'm currently serving on the board of the APA San Diego chapter, and I work with RIC Engineering. I'm here with Brian Mooney. Brian started one of the first multidisciplinary planning firms in the state. He's been active with creating films about urban history in San Diego. He is the president of the Planner Emeritus Network, past president of AEP, and currently a fellow of the American Institute of Planners. And now he works with me at RIC Engineering. Welcome, Brian.
And that's the special part, that's working with you.
So I want to start out with your early career. So why did you choose planning as a profession, and when was that decision made?
That's great. Well, actually, it was an evolution versus a decision. I actually started my career really as an anthropologist, and I really was looking to go to graduate school and work towards a PhD in either doing anthropology, urban anthropology, and archaeology. What happened was I got recruited out of college to go work in this new field of environmental planning because CEQA had just been passed, and the County of San Diego, City of San Diego, City of San Francisco, County of San Francisco, Santa Barbara were all looking at, well, who's going to implement this new law, the California Environmental Quality Act? And a number of them said, we're going to go look at the ologists, and went to the universities. I was at San Diego State, and I had been working as an anthropologist. I'd done urban anthropology work, and I had done archaeological work in ethnohistory, and they said that would fit perfectly into it. I had a interesting Ford Foundation grant that I was a student researcher on, looking at community organization, environmental control in San Diego County. And there I had to interact with planners. I didn't know what planners were, and so it was kind of a fascinating thing. And they were creating the first community plans in the San Diego area, this 1973, 1974. Archaeology in San Diego, we have a lot of Native American communities, a lot of Indian reservations. And basically cultural resources became very, very important in that. The other thing is I had a passion for historic preservation. So they said, come to work with us. We'll have you as a specialist, as an anthropologist, and we'll have you working with communities. But you got to learn this law, and we're all learning it together. And so it was really there that I got my introduction to planning, and it was through environmental planning. But also I was working very closely with the regulatory planners and long-range planners. And so it was really that introduction in 1974, 75, and County of San Diego. And I was fascinated because I really, as an anthropologist, I wanted to make a difference. I was more focused on applied anthropology. How do I work within a community that really is going to offer change in a positive way? And I started looking at planning and saying, this might be the tool, this might be the career that I can do. But it was really, from the environmental planning standpoint, I formed the company about 5 years later, after 5 years with the County of San Diego, and ultimately with a guy named Tony Lettieri. And Tony was a traditional planner, later served on the Planning Commission. The firm was called Mooney Lettieri in the beginning. And it was through him that I really got intrigued with long-range planning. Also, back in the early time, I discovered Ian McHarg's work in Design with Nature. And so that also influenced a lot of the things, started creating this aspect of how I look at the world, both as an environmental planner and later as more of an urban planner, rural planner. I see planning as this catch-all for all of these things, but I think the cornerstone was that aspect of wanting to make a difference in my communities.
Yeah. So thinking through the many different eras of your career, is there one project that sticks out to you as particularly challenging that tested your personal or professional values that you could think of?
I can think of many of them, and many of them. Some I've worked on with you and the team, of course. But going back to the early days with Tony Lettieri, the city of Santee had just incorporated. And the city of Santee is on the San Diego River, east of the city of San Diego, and they had basically incorporated, and they said, look, we need to do a long-range plan, and we want to create a there. We want to create a downtown. And all of the previous plans actually had called for a highway down the middle of the river, the San Diego River, which would be similar to Interstate 8 in San Diego. And it also, basically, they had 500 acres in the center of town around the river. But then they had an 80-acre parcel. They said, we think the best thing to do is really create a shopping center. So that's what you did in the 70s and early 80s, is you created a regional shopping center. And in looking at it, we basically tried to convince the Planning Commission and City Council, which ultimately we did, that there was a bigger picture here. Also, San Diego was just adding the trolley, but it was stopping in a neighboring city called El Cajon. So we got the opportunity to really create a long-range plan that revisioned the entire community, reoriented ultimately a real downtown, we called the Santee Town Center, ultimately extended the trolley into the community to create a walkable community, and then the preservation, got the highway out of the river, which was another very major move, and the preservation of the San Diego River. The challenge was we had this wonderful master plan that was walkable. It was really the pre-new urbanism, but it was that concept in relationship to it. The city manager came to us after we'd finished the plan, and everybody was excited about it, and said, you know, we have one thing, our major employer in town, our major tax base is Price Club. Price Club is now Costco. And they said that they really want to move into the town center, so you need to reorient it to be a big box center. And so that was one of the biggest challenges I ever had. We did change the orientation for that one portion, but it evolved and is continuing to be evolved into being a very special location. The other ones that without mentioning one specific one, but overall, I've had an opportunity to work in Imperial County, which is a very poor, largely Hispanic community. And right now, so it's kind of my big swan song, if you will, I'm doing Lithium Valley, and it's 50,000 acres at the Salton Sea, which ultimately could provide employment for up to 10 to 20,000 individuals based on the extraction of lithium through a very creative process in the geothermal. So that's one that I'm currently working on, which I'm very excited about making a very big difference. In relationship to what the challenge is the Salton Sea has been a dying sea. And so how do you solve a very technical problem in relationship to, and the aspect of making sure also that the development is going to be, you know, balanced with the environment, and make sure that the current citizens of Imperial County are the ones that get first priority for the jobs. I'm partnering in this project also with San Diego State University, the Imperial Valley College, and we actually are balancing, so creating an education system, because they had no engineering degrees there. They have, as a matter of fact, the majority of the professionals are coming from Mexicali, because the university's down there. So we really are making some big difference, and it's fascinating to do a master planning project that also involves education to reorient the citizens to be able to get those jobs. Currently, they're all farming jobs. So that's, yes, in the past from the Santee, and now in the future with Lithium Valley and Imperial County.
Yeah, I've gotten to witness you and the team go through some of those challenges, and it's been really interesting to hear about Lithium Valley and all the different multidisciplinary challenges that you've encountered. Definitely. Yeah. So thinking a bit more broadly about the profession, how do you think the planning profession helps cities, maybe like Lithium Valley and Santee, just on a more broad sense?
I think the biggest thing is what planning is about is usually change. And it's how do you get, and one of my biggest passions is working with the communities in relationship to that. Working with the community to understand what kind of change they want, they need, and how they can move forward. And I think planning really is that tool that you use it for. Unfortunately, planning is also politics. And so that bigger picture is how do you marry the both in relationship to, because we don't make the decisions. We're making recommendations to a political board. There's financial aspects associated with it too. But it really is that one tool that we have, and really throughout the world, from a standpoint of making a difference and trying to create a vision for the future that will affect change and then move forward. I'm passionate about the opportunities planning gives us, the opportunities that we can do for communities. Doesn't always work. And sometimes it's driven more by one side or the other. I can remember when counties were focusing, fighting cities on a tax base in relationship to that. So it was, oh, let me just get this thing approved, and it may not really fit the character of the community or be the best interest for everybody. Or, hey, I need jobs, so let's build prisons. There are a lot of aspects of planning that are pretty tough, but ultimately it really is all about how can we do change for the positive and for the community.
Totally. So then, kind of bridging into APA, how do you see what do you see in the value of a professional organization like APA?
I've been very vocal since the beginning of my career about the value of both the American Planning Association. Actually, when I started my career, it was the ASPO, American Society of Planning Officials, and then the American Institute of Planners. And so it's rather seeing the APA evolve into what the two merged. And then also the Association of Environmental Professionals. I want to emphasize that that's another key organization. I think it's one, it creates the opportunity for us to dialogue and for us to learn from each other, because every city, every jurisdiction has a little different aspect, and understanding some of the challenges that we're going through, and yes, some of the opportunities and some of the new trends. The organizations give us that thing, just like this conference that we're at today is going to be a major part. I think the certification process, having AICP is an excellent tool, both from the standpoint of recognizing, the level. I know some cities, and I've worked in a number of cities where they don't have that level, and I think two things is one, ethics and relationship, and I'm going to have the opportunity to talk about ethics a little later on in the conference. But that to me is one thing, and then two is also the continuing education portion, and APA is the one that gives us that aspect of continuing education. Planning changes, as we said, it's about change in general, but because of that change, you have to always be learning. You have to always be excited. And I'm one of those individuals that, even today, at my ripe young age of 75, I'm always wanting to learn. I want to find the next thing. I want to expand myself. And it's just very, very important to me. And planning allows me to do that, and APA allows me the tools to go out and expand that.
On that note, so, I'm Canadian, and I know you've done quite a bit of traveling. What do you pull from your travels that you bring into your work?
Great question. First of all, I think that's one of the things planners have to do. You have to get out and experience the world in relationship to seeing what's out there. What have people done? I recently came from your community. I was up in Vancouver, and I was just amazed. Now, Vancouver developers have been doing a lot of San Diego. Of course, Vancouver also is one of the more dense cities in relationship to it. So just seeing it, how they've done, and they've really married architecture, public space, pedestrian activities, transit into just a wonderful thing. They haven't been able to conquer the expense aspect, because it is a very expensive city, but it's a beautiful city in relationship to it, and people love it. The diversity of the community I'm fascinated with. I've had a chance to visit Hong Kong, and one of the more interesting ones is I was invited by the State Department to Guangzhou, China. And there was just beginning to build. And so there was about 2003, 2004, and seeing a city that was just transitioning. I mean, just overnight, it was going from, 2 million people to 10 million people in relationship to that, and how they were handling the growth and the development. A lot of American firms were doing the work over there. I'm from the Boston area, and I love Boston, and there, because of historic preservation and how you pull those together. But I think that, and that's something I do, as my wife will regularly say, is we take a vacation to go, Brian, to go look at cities and towns so that we can learn about the next thing he wants to do. But it just really is the best way to do it. And I want to emphasize, it's not just cities, it's also small towns. Recently, we finished a project in Garden City, Kansas. And just being in this very unique community in basically in the flatlands of Kansas. It's surprising enough finding out that I knew a lot about it, because it was the subject of a very famous novel written in the 50s, In Cold Blood, in relationship, which is a very famous murder. But how this historic and how these villages basically have been able to continue. And that's a town of probably 40,000 people, but it's got these great bones that go back to the 1800s in a downtown area. But now they have to evolve into the next phase and how we can help them go there. So it's the big cities, and then it's the small towns that I just love doing and visiting and making sure that's part of my career and continuing.
And I know a lot of your work, with your background in anthropology, you bring a lot of like history into your work. So as I mentioned in the intro, you have created several films about the history of the San Diego area. Can you tell me a bit about that work and how you got started in that and some of the films you've created?
Sure, yeah. And my master's degree is actually in history.
Oh, is it?
So that's my undergraduate work is anthropology, and it's really urban history. I studied, the history of city planning, for the most part in the 20th century, but really I emphasized the earlier periods in John Nolan. John Nolan did the first master plan for San Diego back in 1908, and so that was a cornerstone of the work. I then went on and looked at Daniel Burnham's work in Chicago, Olmsted's work in Los Angeles. There's just been a number of them, and I'm still fascinated with that trend, roughly from 1896 to 1908. A number of people know also I have a son. My youngest son went to film school, and I have three wonderful sons that I was with. But this one, he didn't have the job right away. So after film school, and he was working at the USC's in the department. And I said, let's do a project together. So that's really how it all started. I've always loved history, and so that was the thing. And I said, let's do something. I've seen the plan for San Diego that was published in 1908. I said, but nobody's ever read it. So let's take that plan and turn it into a script. And let's use the images that actually were, that John Nolan put in that, to tell the story of the very first master plan. And so that's really how that first film came out. And I just found it's a wonderful medium to really get out and discuss things and discuss issues. Then Sandag was doing a new, really rethinking the transportation system, San Diego Association of Governments. So I was, at that time, I was the chair of the Urban Land Institute, San Diego Tijuana Urban Land Institute. And I said, let's do a film about the new focus on planning for San Diego. Let's take the historic context, because Nolan did the 1908 plan. He also did a 1926 plan, which shifted largely because of transportation. They wanted to create and site the San Diego airport where it currently is. And now San Diego is going to take a next step into the 21st century. And how can we really create a transit system that works for all people? Also, of course, like everywhere else in California, we were looking at how do we solve the housing crisis. Right. And so, to me, the best way to do that was through film. And so I've written a couple of scripts. I've also done one for the APA called Changing Faces, Changing Places, which basically was all about how we as planners need to be looking at the demographics. By the way, my travel, one of the things I'm always excited to see is really how culturally different cities are and how they adapt to the many different faces that you have. And so that film really focuses on our need to really understand maybe the evolution more of neighborhoods versus the whole area to reflect the cultural values. I'm still looking for that Canadian neighborhood in my San Diego cities.
Me too.
But the history is, and using film to tell the story is something I'm very excited about. I may have mentioned to you the idea of doing one about the history of planning California is something that I'm toying with right now, and whether it's done through a film or some other aspect, and how do I capsulize it into an hour. But one of the things that we have trouble with planners is my good friend Mike Stepner was a professor for many years at the New School of Architecture and also city architect for the city of San Diego. Always said planners have amnesia. They always remember the last 20 years, but they forget anything beyond that. Yeah. And so something like this would give us the opportunity to be able to say, let me look at that movie to remind what we did in 1926 that might have value, or 1950, and something like that. So that's one of the reasons I love doing film work, and I think it's an important tool and media for us to work with. And we're getting lazy, we don't read anymore.
So we've been thinking about the past, but how about the future? What do you see as the most important issue facing California communities into the future?
The federal government? No. I'm toying with that aspect, I must admit. We're in a very unique period in relationship, and I don't want to be overly political. Obviously, climate change is a huge issue in relationship to how we do it and how we're acting. I do think that there are international issues that we have to be looking at and how that's going to fit in. And California is uniquely situated because ultimately it also is a standalone, such a powerful economy. The cities are struggling in some cases in relationship and have been struggling. And how we're going to be addressing that within those communities in relationship to it. But I do think that it's one of those aspects of design for looking at resilience is really the key thing. The idea that we're going to stay the way we are. Of course, in San Diego, we see it regularly with the erosion of the bluffs. We're also seeing it, let's use Imperial Valley again, when it starts being 110, 120, 130 degrees on a regular basis. How are you designing the city to live? That's one of the things with Lithium Valley. We've talked about maybe creating more of almost an entire enclosed area that you're going to be able to, because you can't go outside. In Colorado, doing a lot of planning work for communities, comprehensive planning, hailstorms, and hail is big, so large, smashing windows. So how are you really going to take these, the issues associated with climate change? And then also the cost of dealing with it, cost of energy, the cost of water. So those things are key things that we have to be factoring in and using new technology to try to solve those problems. And technology will be part of the solution, but that's what I see is probably the really the biggest issue. Although I do think the federal government is one of those concerns they have to worry about.
So what advice as we tackle these issues, climate change and others, what advice do you have for prospective planners, current students, emerging planners?
One is don't just rely on what you know now. Really, you need to be looking at what's happening around the world. You can't just stay in your own little bubble. You need to read. You need to continue to educate yourself. I do think, and my good friend John Bridges recently said this, technology, you've got to basically, and this is tough for a guy like me because I've been around so long and I'm not as good technology as you are, and those in your age group. But ultimately, you got to stay on top of technology. I hate to say it, but I think the artificial intelligence, it may be misused, but that's something we have to learn and understand how to use in a more efficient area. It could be a wider range of different things, from a standpoint. When we talk about visioning, are there new tools that we can use to really get out to the community in relation to showing what the city could look like in the future? So that may be another aspect. And whether it's not just community meetings, it's some other way to help communicate. And that's going to be probably more through technology. And also outreaching to get community groups to come to our meetings to talk about some of these big issues. So to me, that's a very aspect. I think old and young people working together, as you know, I'm just passionate about that and being able to work with young planners. I learn from them, and maybe they learn a little bit something from me, but finding ways that we can all work together to solve some of these problems and move forward.
Brian, can you tell me a bit more about your role with Penn and CPAT?
Right, actually the Planners Emeritus Network is, I became involved, probably about 2014, 2015, and it was a great honor in relationship to it. It's a organization that the California American Planning Association chapter has put together. It used to be national, but now it's largely focused in California. And they basically give an award out once a year to individuals that have had a long career and have done some things. And then they, basically get together on a regular basis to see how they can help the broader perspective. And one of the things since the last 10 years or so, we found ourselves very active with a couple of things. Number one, working with young people. Again, as I've mentioned in the past, that to me is I'm passionate about it, and finding ways that we can pair, seasoned veterans of the planning profession with younger planning professions. Number two is we are doing the ethics now on a regular basis, so we will be doing the ethics lecture and have done the last couple of years, which is something that sometimes we forget about. And so I think it's important to have that ethics there. One of the key things that we have is called CPAT, Community Planning Assistance Team. And that's something I've been involved with. Hanson Hom is very active and just doing a great job in relationship to leading that program. And so the last probably 5 to 6 years, and this is all pro bono work, we go into communities that don't have much of a budget in relationship to doing something that they may want to try to achieve. In the Central Valley, we had a small city that we worked on a downtown plan for. We recently did one here in Monterey for the city of Marina, where they had roughly, I guess it was maybe 200 acres or so, almost overlooking the ocean. That was part of the old fort in the community. It had a lot of housing, dilapidated, and they really said, we'd really like to develop this for affordable housing. What we can do? So we worked with the community to develop strategies of that. Not too long ago, we did Plumas County, which had been devastated by the Dixie Fire, and worked with the Plumas County community to really rebuild and some of the strategies there. We've just finished Oroville, and Oroville was a fascinating, because they had annexed called South Side, a neighborhood which was a historically black neighborhood, going back to the turn of the century, and now had been deteriorated in relationship to, was really largely still African American, Hispanic, and then Hmong, and then deteriorating housing, didn't have the infrastructure, no sidewalks, really an under-serviced community. So we worked with the community there to develop strategies. And now we're up in McKinleyville, and where we're talking with individuals that want to incorporate. So it's a pretty wide range of types of issues we get involved with.
Right.
And I like to think that we do get a lot of, one, very positive from a standpoint of, as a participant, of feeling you're really doing something in the planning field that means something. But two is also from the community themselves, and they're feeling that, hey, and this is where planning really helps out in relationship to that. This is a strategy coming in, and these individuals that have a lot of experience are giving them some ideas and moving forward and working with their staff to find solutions. So I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do at Penn. And I'm also very happy to turn over the reins of the presidency to Linda Tatum, who is going to do a great job, I'm sure, in relationship to that.
Great.
But yeah, Planners Emeritus Network has been one of those things. It reminds me, by the way, one of the projects that I was forced into, and it reminds me because of Plumas County, was we lost our house in the Cedar Fire. The Cedar Fire in San Diego was in 2003, and we lost roughly 2,500 homes. And my community, was called Scripps Ranch, was devastated. And being one of those individuals that I can't just sit back and not do anything, I found myself involved with the community, and we created something called the Phoenix Project, and working with all of the people that lost their homes in the city of San Diego, and a hand-picked group of individuals that involved insurance, architecture, legal elements, and at the same time our city councilman, to rebuild our community. Very meaningful in relationship to, very challenging.
Yeah.
It took us roughly, for our home, a year and a half. There were 3 homes where I lived that burned right next to each other. We hired one architect, one contractor to rebuild. But also then in some area we lost, I think, probably about 50 homes in one neighborhood. And we then brought a developer in to rebuild that. And we found different choices for different groups. And that was one of the more interesting and at the same time challenging planning projects I've ever been involved with. And that's why when going to Plumas County, working as part of CPAT really kind of fit into that and made a very special difference.
You were really taking your work home with you.
I was. The funny thing is, it also gave me the opportunity, because I live in a community that's very family oriented. We have very good schools, and so when we lost our house, our children had already been going to college and they were gone. So we said, well, we don't need to stay in the immediate area. We'll let everybody else rent those. So we then rented a place at the beach, and I've revived my old days of saying I'm going to surf again. And ultimately then the people that were renting from the beach sold because the markets were going up. So then we moved downtown and lived in one of the high rises. And so we also used it as an experience to experience different parts of the neighborhood of San Diego. And that was a wonderful thing. So we turned what was a very negative experience into a very positive experience.
Yeah. And all the neighborhoods are so different and unique.
That's right, and it's, you know, and that's one of the things I would say to any, also a planner, get out and experience the neighborhoods of your city or surrounding cities, and don't just, you know, look at staying in one location. Both the urban, the suburban, the rural, I mean, see it all and participate, go stay there. One thing that we also are doing with Penn and the chapter historian is developing these oral histories. And we think it's an opportunity to really hear the many voices of planners, particularly planners that have been around for quite a bit, and seeing the evolution and the change. I'm very proud of the work. Greg Konar has just been outstanding in relationship to adding the technology and the knowledge of actually doing the film work. Young people like yourself in relationship to trying to match up. Each one has been a little different. We have some that are more conversationally oriented, some that are old friends interviewing others, and some that are the young planner that interviewing the older planner. So I hope the oral histories are going to continue to be a real asset to the American Planning Association. I will say, another hat I wear, I'm on the board of trustees of the San Diego History Center, so that goes back with my passion for history. We're doing the same thing there, except for neighborhoods. And we get basically trying to get the voices of the very different neighborhoods, the same thing we just talked about earlier in relationship to, we want to get into the Hispanic community, the Filipino community, the African American community, the Vietnamese community, the Filipino communities I mentioned, and hear their stories of what it was like growing up and trying to archive that so we can have really this history. History isn't just the big event. It's also the people and the cultures that make up your community. And so that's an extremely important thing. So I'm very proud of the oral history, but I do want to give credit to the key people, which one is Greg Konar, and again, Hanson Hom.
So Brian, what's next for you as you move into this next chapter of your career?
Great question, and I've been going back and forth. As I said, I am toying with the idea of doing another film, and that's something that I'm doing. I started out really wanting to be an artist, and I'm, you know, basically I was drawing. I did caricatures my first couple of years of college, and then later in college I was the illustrator for the archaeologists in relationship to artifacts and things like that. So drawing plans and plants and, if you will, lithic artifacts, so you can call them rocks. But ultimately, I want to take that skill and try to actually going into communities. I've just started. I've taken a painting class. I took and that's oil painting. I took a drawing class of trying to capture the communities I go into. So it's really carrying on that passion, but now doing it more through communicating through art. And I have a place also. I live in San Diego, but I also have a home in Cape Cod, and kind of the diverse areas gives me an opportunity to travel. I'll be back there in a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, and then I'm going to be down in New York, and whether it's an urban atmosphere or things, but the idea of bringing art back to me is very exciting, and so that's, I hope, going to be part of the next chapter in relationship to some of the things we're doing. I also have been asked to serve on some advisory boards at San Diego State University, and I've taught in the past. I've taught at the New School of Architecture. I've taught at UC San Diego. I would love to teach again. I would love to do that. I quit teaching at COVID because I couldn't stand Zoom classes. I'm very about interacting with students, and to me that's the most important part. But I would say between the artistic aspects and teaching, it'd probably be the things in my in my future, whether it's university level or whether it's some other aspect of, talking about how I have those passions and things like that.
Well, that was all my questions. Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, I tell you, it's my pleasure, and I'm excited about the things you're doing and where we're going as a company, as basically APA in general in relationship to your leadership. And I look forward to 10 more years, maybe 20 years, and somebody else. I'll probably stop at 30.
I think I've already been to your retirement party, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.